Okay, you should be good.
We're good? You ready, Grandma?
I'm ready.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I should do an introduction, but this is my wonderful Grandma Judy, my mom's mom. And she's just going to answer some wonderful interview questions that our family put together for her. So thanks for answering questions, Grandma.
I'm pleased to do it for you.
Yay! So the first question I wanted to ask was, what was life like growing up for you?
Growing up was very good. I had a happy childhood, and it was a simple one. We did not go on trips and things, but I walked to school about 2 blocks. We had a school that was one building that housed grades 1 through 11, and all in the same building. So that's what I did for 11 years, walking back and forth to school. We walked by the post office where we had boxes that we opened and would take when old enough, took the mail home when we went. And there was no lunchroom, so we walked home for lunch.
Okay.
We didn't even bring lunches that I remember.
The mail you got to your house came to your school?
No, to the post office.
Oh,
There
okay,
was a
okay.
post office.
Okay.
A rural post office that...
And where did you grow up again?
I grew up in Steelville, Illinois, and it was about 1,200 or 1,500 people when I was living there.
Nice. And what kind of activities did you do with your friends, or extracurricular activities at school did you do?
Well, we didn't have much in the way of activities because we were so small. We had a basketball team that was on a schedule back and forth with other schools around, and we had a very close rivalry between Steelville and Percy, which was 2 miles away. So that was always a big battle.
Yeah.
So in high school, I was a cheerleader.
I didn't know that.
I was. And
Oh, were you the homecoming queen for
well, that
cheer?
was senior year at our 12th. We went to a district high school by bus, 10 miles away. And that was senior year, yes. And it was, I don't consider that, it wasn't popularity. It was people buying, contributing pennies and things like that. So it was bought, so to speak.
So you bought being homecoming queen?
Oh, I didn't.
Oh.
Other people.
Oh, okay.
Like voting. It was
Okay.
like voting, but it was money.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So
And the money was used for the school and stuff?
probably for the dance or something.
Gotcha. So I wanted to know, tell me about a time you got into trouble as a kid and what happened.
Well, the thing that came to mind was when we first moved to southern Illinois, we moved to Percy. And that was, as I told you, that was 2 miles away. And I was probably 5 when we moved down there. I'm not sure. But I remember one time that my dad was next door talking to somebody, and I went over and said something, and he said something, and I smarted off at him, and he sent me packing, and I got a lesson in not talking back to your parents. So that's what I remember about that. And as far as in trouble, I never got into trouble in school. I was a model student. But I did get in trouble with a very good friend, probably my best friend, when we had a school dance. I don't know what it was. And the boy that took her walked me home instead of her. So I think you could call that trouble.
I'd say so. Little homewrecker.
Well, I'm not very proud of that, but I was very immature, let me say.
I think we were all immature in high school. And what was your relationship like with your parents and your siblings growing up?
Well, my siblings were Aunt Juanita, and my brother Bill was 10 years behind me. Mm-hmm. So it was, for 10 years, it was just Juanita and me. Mm-hmm. And we got along good. We were, we were only a little over a year apart, so we were, we played together. We got into squabbles, still do, but we had a good relationship. And we had lots of fun playing games inside and out. And my dad built us a basketball court in the backyard.
Oh, cool.
Even though we were girls. So he was a very
progressive.
He was a very loving and patient dad. So when that earlier incident with him, that was a nice reminder to me.
And what about with your mom?
Yes, a good relationship. Mom was more of a disciplinarian than Dad was. And, but she was warm, she was loving, and she was a typical housewife in the 1940s, 30s and 40s. So,
can you tell about the time that Uncle Bill pestered you guys and what you did to him?
I can tell that, yes. When Bill came along, and we had to have been in high school, because he must have been about 4 or 5, and he was a pest. And he pestered us, and he pestered us, until we grabbed him, and we had some jump ropes, and we tied him up and put him under a bed. Juanita and I did.
How did he get found? Did you just leave him there?
We probably weren't very adept at tying people up, so I'm sure he got out. But
what traits from each of your parents do you think you and your siblings have the most of?
What traits?
Yeah, do you recognize parts of yourself that are most from your dad or your mom, or do you find yourself saying or doing things that are from one of your parents that you realize, oh yeah, I know where I got that from?
Well, I wrote about that in my Storyworth, and I couldn't identify a lot, but I think from Mother I learned how to be a girl, how to be you know, help build a family. That is what I would call it. And my dad was he was more fun. He took me hunting when he went, and he took me. Let me back up. He took me hunting for quail, is what. And he took me out on the mine road where he worked, the haulage road, and taught me how to drive out there. And so he was that kind of a person.
How old were you when you learned how to drive?
Well, 15, and whenever I was old enough,
Okay.
and you know, he was trusting, and he was very patient. If he had to explain something to you, either I don't remember what it was, but I can remember him helping me with a project and saying, now just slow down and do it right, and then you'll be just fine. So he was, I never was spanked, except maybe that early one. I think it was. But never spanked and slapped. There was no anything like that. It was gentle discipline. And so I do remember one incident when we always wanted to go to the swimming pool in the summertime. Well, the swimming pool was 12 miles away. So I can remember one Sunday when we were probably in upper elementary school, and we were going, it was Sunday after church, and we were going to the swimming pool. But before we went, we stopped to see an elderly couple that my folks visited on a regular basis. And we were getting very impatient, and we were disciplined. I don't remember how it was, that this is important, and you'll get to go to the swimming pool, but just be patient, sit still, and be quiet, that sort of thing. So it was that kind of, so they taught us a value in life of looking out for other people, older people. But my dad was always, and Mom too, but Dad's the one that I remember because we only had one car, and he was the one that had it most of the time. But they were always up for doing things for other people. And they were also very good about having us, and I think this is in high school days, that they were always happy to have friends over and provide snacks and that sort of thing. No TV. We didn't have TV. So we did games. But I can remember one time specifically in the winter, and we probably half a dozen, 6 or 8 of us went off and went skating, ice skating. Came home cold, of course, and they had hot chocolate and cookies and things like that, and welcomed them. And so we also had an incident when some of the high school boys at Halloween managed to take our swing from the front porch and string it up somewhere on a pole. That's pretty fuzzy on that one, but they were tolerant. The boys were notified that they would bring it back, and they did. So,
And didn't Grandpa Bill also drive kids home from basketball practice so they could be on?
he did. by going to the district high school, it made it very difficult for anybody interested in athletics to stay after school for practices. And yes, my dad did help with that. And he also would drive to the state basketball tournaments and take us kids and others, you know, a carload. He was always up for that. Or we had, right across from the school, we had a movie theater. Well, it burned down.
Oh, wow.
And so he would take us to Percy to a movie there. So, you know, they were just really good in relating to young people and to us as well, and helping out, and they just liked children.
Nice. What was your favorite subject in school?
You know, I don't remember having a favorite one particularly. I was good in my classes. I was a straight A student, and was able to maintain that, and missed very few days of school. But I was a reader, so I'd probably English would be my favorite.
Cool. Were there any, what was like the biggest struggle growing up, like for you or your family?
For our family?
Or what was the most challenging thing growing up?
Maybe talk about the war.
The war?
Talk about what you had to do during the war.
Yeah.
I mean, if that was
Yeah.
If that was a struggle
if that
growing
was
up.
kind of a struggle.
Well,
If not, we
you
still
know,
want to hear about it.
it wasn't for us. We were middle class. We were a middle class family, but our parents were, and a few others that worked with the mine. We came to Southern Illinois when my dad came down was transferred from northern part of Illinois to a coal mine that they were starting. And my dad was a teacher after he got out of college. So we were educated ones, our family. Mother had gone to school, but she didn't complete her college because I was on the way, I believe. And so she dropped out. And, but the rest, other than the engineers that came along from the Northern Illinois mine, people in that community were basically families of immigrants from Germany, mostly, that were there. Many still spoke, the older ones spoke German. They were workers. They were not, they didn't go to school, and for many of the boys especially, once they got to the age of that they could legally stop school, they would, and we had a shoe factory there, and they went to work in the shoe factory. So now the sons of the engineers, they went to the Rolla, Missouri School of Mines, and they became engineers. So there really was a split. So when you say what was the hardest, we didn't have it hard. We had enough. My dad never ran up a debt. He paid his bills. He bought his cars. He liked to. He always liked to have a new car every 2 or 3 years, but he paid cash for it. So that was the kind of economy that we lived in. And then, so along that line, there was a time, well, during World War II, 1942 to 1945, things were rationed, and you had to have coupons to get butter, meat, shoes, sugar, yes. And so, but my dad had a really good relationship with the people on the farms around, because he dealt with them in terms of their land and its relationship to the mine. So he knew them all, and they were always giving him things. And he would get coupons. Oh, gasoline. That was the other thing. Gasoline was rationed. Well, because he was deferred from going into the Army because of they needed the coal production. So he was given a deferment, and he got all the gasoline that he needed for us. So we didn't suffer at all from that, really. And some of the things we did during the war, well, now, he was one who did not like margarine. Margarine came into the picture. White margarine.
How old were you during the war?
Well, 42, I was 10.
Okay.
So I was 10 to 13, about, or 14 during the war. But we had blackouts. We had people who, what do they call them? I don't know, that patrolled the streets to make sure that you know, it was like we were in Europe during, it was a little bit of overkill for our little town. But anyway, you didn't want any lights out. And so the volunteers, neighbors, patrolled for lights out.
At night?
Yes. Yeah. And we collected things like rubber bands. We would make big balls of rubber bands and aluminum foil. We gathered, as a community, we gathered pieces of iron or things like that. I don't remember where it went. I just know what we did to gather it together, but it was all for the war effort. And this was a real close-knit community. We were kind of outsiders because we're educated people that came into the community. But it was friendly. It wasn't like, you know, that we were excluded or anything. But so another incident, oh, I know where I was going on with this. So you couldn't get a new car. All the iron and steel or whatever went to the war effort. So our little community had a 4th of July celebration every year, and they raffled off a car, a new car that was donated. And so one year, and when my brother Bill was, I think he was only 3 or 4, my dad bought a bunch of tickets in his name, and he won a car. Well, before he could even get before it was, he even really knew that much about it, somebody wanted to called him to buy his car that he had. So that was, you know, we were fortunate. Now, Bill was always lucky. He's like you, Luke, in that you are lucky, Luke. Well, he was lucky, Bill. And he was the only boy in our family, so he was pretty much doted on by my Grandma Gertie, who was my dad's mom. And he could do no wrong. She was good to us, and she and I were buddies. But Bill was the golden-haired child.
Can you